Hello again. I'm going to continue on this journey of looking at certain aspects of this falsified, unsigned statement that was accepted by Rachel Hudson. It was compiled by a combination of, it was compiled by allegedly Florence's solicitor, Laura Peel. I'm going to show you how it was falsified and manipulated and why it was not unsigned and why Rachel Hudson knew it was unsigned. Rachel Hudson, remember, had 8 weeks to ask for a signed copy of this statement that at the end said would be provided, which formed what they call the chief and best evidence in supporting their application for a long-term care order, particularly a younger daughter. One of these is very, very peculiar. I'll explain why, but I'll try to read it in as efficient form as I can. So what older daughter is saying is she can remember her mum calling me or ringing me at work, tell me she had done something wrong. This could be something like not being tidy enough or so on and so forth. I was only very young. So very young, but she can still remember it, I suppose, is a little strange. But my dad would come home and hit me with his belt. I remember the sound of the car pulling up outside and being scared. I also remember that he used to cycle to and from work, but there's a sign of the engine that sticks in my mind. And this is really, really interesting because firstly, I don't really understand where it ever came from, but I'll tell you why this is really interesting. In previous videos, I told you that this statement was extracted from some very, very oddly curated notes that were written by elder daughter in very, very odd format. Red, blue, red, blue. It wasn't so much somebody being asked to almost jot down feverishly their memories. It was somebody who did it in a very calculated way, and we've got some interesting feedback about that. Now, this allegation did appear in those, but it evolved because originally the cycling bit didn't appear, because what she suggested is this strange belt hitting occurred at a time before her younger sister was born. Now, at that time, excuse me, I was working in locations. There would have been potentially 3 locations, actually, if you take that period of time before her sister was born. And none of them had the ability, all of them were located very close to metro stations. None of them had allocated parking. And I work in finance and more on the analysis side. And anybody who knows me will know that I'm not the greatest of commuters, where I like to use my commuting time, if possible, quite productively. So what that would mean would be either I would try to cycle, in some cases I ran, actually, and people who know me would verify that. So I would cycle because 2 of these facilities, 2 of these offices had shower facilities. What the first one didn't, so I had to take the metro on that occasion. It was all were central Newcastle. So I would, in the first instance, the first couple of years, I would take the metro. Never travel by a car. And in the other 2, I mixed it up between metro and bike stroke running. It used to be a lot fitter then. And they had shower facilities. So when this, and why I do that is because I wanted to either use the commuting time for fitness or knowledge. So in terms of knowledge, I would spend my time, if I took the metro, reading. reading company news or economic news or so on and so forth. So when these notes were procured, I had it was a time when we had these absurd parental assessments by Donna Grant, who's incentivized to, so effectively you have to be assessed by someone who's financially incentivized to see your children taken. I challenged that, and I challenged it in other position statements, because I showed metro tickets that I actually had and said I wasn't actually using, I wasn't travelling by car. There was no allocated parking, and it was far more efficient to use either my own means of transport, running, cycling, or to use the metro system. And then right at the end, Peel, I assume working in cahoots with Tyneside, massaged this allocation to say occasionally he used his bike. That was never there initially. And the other odd thing is where older daughter would have been at that time of the day would be at the front of the house. That's where a playroom, which was later used as a bedroom, was located. Now, the allocated parking, the property is at the back. So even if this were to be true and the car wasn't used, it would be unlikely she could have heard anything, because the car would approach from the back and she would have been at the front, likely watching children's television, as children did after school. I can remember in one of my parental assessment meetings with Donna Grant, I showed metro tickets, and she had a really angry look on her face and said, well, why would you keep those? Why would you want to keep those? Well, that's irrelevant, because you could see it had dismantled one of these early allocations. So they had to massage it to try to get around that. And I set a number of these obstacles to see how the allegations evolved to try to get round. So I was setting them up to show how it was falsified. It didn't matter, because Hudson would sign off anything. There's a subterranean threshold criteria. So, and the other thing is as well, is if that at the time younger daughter was swimming 2 to 3 times a week in an organised club, and there were occasional school sessions, she was participating in school physical education, had a very high attendance level. So coming home with some frenzied belt attack, I can only assume it was a silk belt or something like that, which I haven't owned. I mean, I own a belt like other people do, but how would you be carrying out this frenzied attack without any detection, when the swimming, gymnastics, other sport, getting changed at school, no one ever noticed any signs of belt marks or anything like that? It was just, but you're in a position where, because these safeguards that are given to the family courts for good reason, are hideously abused to feed this very, very troubling business model where children are packaged up as long-term cash generative assets to be traded with private equity. You can't defend yourself, because it is structured so you're guilty until proven innocent. But how can you prove yourself innocent when you show that there's massaging of allegations, that they've evolved to navigate around the challenges you presented to them, and it's still not acknowledged? And this is a very, very good example of that. Some of the allegations in these notes didn't even make it into the statement. I mean, I'll give you one example. One was that one birthday, I think it meant older daughter's birthday, that her mother sat down in front of her and devoured an entire family-sized birthday cake in front of her. Now, if you've seen a family-sized birthday cake, you will see that, me personally, I would struggle to get up to and past 2 slices. A family birthday cake would probably have about 8 slices. So he sat her down and presented this cake and then devoured it entirely herself. But I think they even saw that was so ridiculous it didn't make it in because it was so easy it was just not credible. And what I'm doing here is I'm showing you why this statement was not signed and accepted in its current form, because they knew very well it was falsified. And Rachel Hudson knew very well it was falsified. And this is what takes us to the heart of the situation, because they're trying to present harassment as holding a judge to account. Now, of course, judges hold positions of great importance, but you cannot have a system where certain citizens are beyond any accountability and are able to be treated differently to the rest of us. She has behaved exceptionally poorly, and this is not an isolated incident according to our own conversations with other people. We don't believe any of those other people, for what it's worth, were engaged in any vandalism. And it's exposing these things and how our daughters has been subject, our younger daughter's been subject to mass psychological abuse on an appalling scale. How she's had her Polish heritage destroyed in a process of cultural genocide that has led to this police state terror. I've taken you through a situation where Northumbria police have de facto admitted that they entered this property on a false pretext that I damaged property of Rachel Hudson. They accused me of reacting with a time machine and going back and engaging in this vandalism. They questioned me about a video that complained about the coordinated coercion I was suffering in terms of my exposure of the FCA's conduct, and also the trade of children in with private equity, and how that leads into the financial system and how it all connects to effectively the secondary objective. So they are again de facto admitted that they are part of this coordinated coercion. They took our devices away, and if you look at one of the questions I was asked, one of the checker that interviewed me had said, the checkers doing it too much credit, because the checker were ruthless, but they were at least structured. He said, "Will I find searches for Rachel Hudson's address in this?" And I said, "No, because we don't need to know where she lived. We don't need to go and visit her house. And even if he did, who doesn't search for other people's addresses and so on and so forth?" You can tell also with the bail conditions. So the bail conditions, were, I had to attend the station. They said on the 10th of February. I refused. I told them straight away, because we know that you've lied. Part of the reason for entering my property was you lied, and they know it, so they scrapped it. But part of the bail conditions were you don't approach Rachel Hudson and other members of the judiciary. If you see them, you have to back off, all this sort of stuff. But they disappeared as well. They knew that there never was a threat. This is not harassment. This is not physical intimidation. This is accountability. And we are drifting to the realms of totalitarianism, where a member of the judiciary who's been caught accepting, and it's also alleged letter from our younger daughter as well, falsified, unsigned evidence to make life-changing decisions, and being held to account of that, trying to spin it as harassment, and then instituting police state terror against somebody doing so, trying to stand up for the welfare and dignity of his daughter, really does take us into the realms of totalitarianism. And I noticed yesterday, I was listening to something with Jacob Rees-Mogg, and he looked at Labour and some of their machinations and used the term totalitarianism. And I think we are seeing more of that in Britain now, although coming from Jacob, who was member of a government who were no paragons of free speech, did seem a little ironic. But I'll close out and I will cover why some of the cultural genocide our young daughter has suffered. And some of this was known to Rachel Hudson, who ignored it. Taken from us beginning of December 2021. Didn't see her for almost 3 weeks. First meeting, blackmailed, into, you won't see her if her mother greets her in Polish or anything like that. An appalling act of racism. Bad treatment of Polish interpreters. Hostility towards Polish language in contact centres. What else have we got? We have Deirdre Ryan's letter, email to us, which is clearly illegal, saying that we can't say that we wish her to come home. We can't say we would like to see her more often. These are appalling crimes against humanity committed by South Tyneside Council. South Tyneside Council won't answer the question why she allegedly lost interest in her Polish heritage at the beginning of December 2021, when she was very enthusiastic about it. Why all of a sudden did it disappear? Deirdre Ryan on recorded calls has said she would write to us and explain. She hasn't, because her legal team has stopped her. They have to say she doesn't want it, because that's the only get out they've got of what is a program of cultural genocide. And these are things people need to know. So we will hold Rachel Hudson account, not because of her person, who she is, because of her conduct and its impact on people's lives, destroying lives through procedural abuses. That's where we are, and that's where we'll continue. And I assume, whilst Northumbria Police engage in this false investigation, this illegitimate investigation, where they've seized our devices, trying to put us under immense psychological pressure, are part of the same campaign. It's the only logical thing that you could come to. They use a pretext, forensic investigation and things like that. It's very easy to take the data off a computer. You don't need to hold them for prolonged periods of time. That is being done to apply psychological abuse onto my wife and I for daring to stand up against corruption and racism. Take care. Bye.